Welcome to Fact Horizon. This is where history meets mystery and facts define the future. We explore the profound truths of human existence, the wonders of the mind, and the secrets of the cosmos, all in one place. If you seek knowledge and wonder, you're in the right spot. Subscribe now and join our journey beyond the horizon.
And it is going to be quite the journey today.
Yeah, seriously. Because, well, what if I told you that your past trauma doesn't actually exist? And, what if your anger isn't some sort of uncontrollable reaction that just happens to you, but it's actually a calculated weapon, like a tool that you actively choose to use to dominate the people around you?
It's a heady premise.
It really is. Today, we are taking a massive deep dive into a text that takes everything we think we know about psychology, human happiness, and our relationships, and just completely flips it on its head. We're exploring part 1 of the revolutionary book, The Courage to be Disliked, by Ichiro Kishimi and Fumitake Koga. And let me tell you, as I was reading through our source material for this, I found myself literally, physically shaking my head at the pages. I mean, the claims in this book are incredibly bold, and honestly, they're highly provocative.
Oh, absolutely. It is the ultimate intellectual provocation, really. But before we get into the actual mechanics of why these claims are made, it is vital to understand the structure of the source material.
Yeah, because it's not a normal book.
Exactly. This is not written like a clinical psychology textbook, nor is it, a bulleted self-help manual. It is structured as a philosophical Socratic dialogue.
Like ancient Greece.
Right, exactly like that. The narrative takes place over 5 nights, and it features a deeply tormented, highly skeptical youth who visits the study of a calm, authoritative, wise philosopher.
And this youth guy, he is just exhausted by the world.
He really is. He finds life to be this chaotic mass of contradictions, and he visits the philosopher determined to absolutely dismantle the older man's claim that the world is inherently simple and that anyone can achieve happiness instantly.
Which is exactly the dynamic we're going to employ today. I am going to channel the energy of that hot-blooded, skeptical youth.
I think you'll do a great job with that.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Because, when you encounter a claim like anyone can be happy instantly, the immediate human reaction is incredibly defensive.
Of course it is.
It sounds like snake oil. It sounds totally dismissive of real, tangible suffering. So I will be bringing that skepticism to the table today, and you will be breaking down the authoritative wisdom of the philosopher.
Well, I welcome the skepticism. In fact, the philosophy we're discussing, it actually requires it.
Right.
For you, the listener, we want this deep dive to be immensely practical. Whether you are currently feeling, say, stuck in a career rut, or whether you are dealing with difficult interpersonal relationships that just feel like an endless maze.
Which we all have.
Exactly. Or whether you are just intensely curious about the hidden, often uncomfortable mechanics of how our minds actually operate, this discussion is totally engineered for you. The wisdom we are exploring has the power to shift your entire paradigm, but, only if we are willing to look at it critically.
So let's lay out the precise scope of our mission today. We are focusing this deep dive on the foundational arguments spanning the first 2 major chapters of the book.
Which cover a lot of ground.
They really do. These are titled The First Night, Deny Trauma, and The Second Night. All problems are interpersonal relationship problems.
Just the titles alone are a lot.
I know, right? Even just saying those titles out loud creates friction. Deny trauma. In our modern cultural climate, that is arguably the heaviest, most controversial claim someone could make.
It absolutely is. To even begin to understand how someone could make that claim, we really have to introduce the mastermind behind the philosopher's worldview.
Okay, let's get into it.
So the framework of this entire book rests on the shoulders of a man named Alfred Adler. Now, when we think of the founding fathers of modern psychology, 2 names immediately dominate the cultural consciousness.
Sigmund Freud and Carl Jung.
Exactly, Freud and Jung. But Adler is the monumental third giant of that era. At the turn of the 20th century, Adler was one of the original core members of the Vienna Psychoanalytic Society alongside Freud.
Wow, okay.
But it is crucial to understand that Adler was never Freud's disciple. Their relationship was founded on equal footing. They were colleagues. And Adler fundamentally, radically disagreed with Freud's core premises.
Really? Like, on what level?
On almost every foundational level. This disagreement was so profound that Adler eventually split off to formulate his own original theories, establishing what is now known as Adlerian psychology.
Okay, well, I have to ask the obvious question then. If Adler is this monumental third giant, on equal footing with Freud, why isn't his name embedded in our daily vocabulary?
That's a great question.
Because, we all know what a Freudian slip is. We talk about the ego and the id and repressed memories all the time.
Right.
We talk about Jungian archetypes. But Adler's name is rarely, if ever, dropped in casual conversation.
Well, Adler actually anticipated this exact phenomenon. He once remarked that there might come a time when the general public wouldn't remember his name or even realize that his specific school of psychology ever existed.
He knew he'd be forgotten.
He suspected it, yeah. But he added that it wouldn't matter.
Why not?
Because he believed his ideas were so profoundly true and essential to human functioning that they would simply outgrow the confines of academic psychology and basically dissolve into common sense.
Oh, wow. That's pretty confident.
And looking at the landscape of personal development over the last century, he was absolutely right.
Really? Where do we see it?
If you dissect massive paradigm-shifting bestsellers, books like Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People or Stephen Covey's The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, the core DNA of Adlerian psychology is woven into the foundation of every single chapter.
Seriously? I had no idea.
Yeah. Adler was a visionary who was 100 years ahead of his time. He focused on human potential, social interest, and the purpose behind our actions, rather than just, diagnosing our dysfunctions.
Okay, so that brings us to the Great Schism, the big breaking point between Adler and Freud.
The crux of it all.
Right. According to our sources, this entire philosophical war comes down to two very technical, academic-sounding words, etiology and teleology.
Yes, those two terms are everything.
And while they sound like, dense jargon, they essentially define how you view the entire trajectory of your life.
Precisely. This is the absolute bedrock of their divergence. And we really need to spend some time unpacking this because, honestly, it changes everything.
Walk me through it. Let's start with Freud.
Okay, so Freud believed in etiology. Etiology is the study of causation. In the realm of psychology, it is essentially the doctrine of determinism.
Determinism, meaning things are predetermined.
Right. It argues that your present circumstances and your future possibilities have already been decided by past occurrences. In Freudian etiology, if you suffer a psychic wound, trauma in your childhood, that past cause dictates your present unhappiness. It treats human life like a vast, predictable machine. A happens, which inevitably causes B, which inevitably results in C.
So, if you input the variables of, say, a traumatic childhood, a broken home, or severe bullying, the machine processes those inputs and inevitably spits out the output of a dysfunctional, anxious, or depressed adult.
Exactly.
It's just basically a strictly linear math equation.
It is, and you can see why etiology is so widely accepted. It is incredibly comforting, right?
Comforting? How so?
Well, if your current misery is the direct, unavoidable result of something that happened to you 20 years ago, then your misery is not your fault.
Ah, I see.
You are just a passenger in the vehicle of your own life. But Adler rejected this entirely. Adler believed in teleology.
Teleology. Okay, break that down.
Teleology is the study of the purpose of a given phenomenon rather than its cause. It is the study of goals. Right. Adlerian psychology asserts that we are not driven by past causes. Instead, we move toward goals that we ourselves set in the present moment.
Right.
Your present behavior is not an echo of the past. It is a strategy executed to achieve an immediate present-day goal.
Okay, this is where I have to step firmly into the shoes of the skeptical youth.
Oh?
Because this leads directly to the title of the first night, Deny Trauma.
I knew we'd get here quickly.
We have to. Because the philosopher in the book states adamantly that Adler definitively denies trauma. Now, looking at that from the perspective of modern society, it sounds borderline offensive.
It does. It sounds very harsh.
It sounds completely invalidating to anyone who has actually suffered. I mean, are you telling me that a victim of a horrific car crash or someone who survived severe abuse isn't suffering because of those events? Are we pretending terrible things don't happen?
No, not at all. And we must be surgically precise here because Adler's point is deeply nuanced.
Okay, explain the nuance then, because it sounds crazy.
Adler is not denying that terrible calamities, horrific abuse, or objective physical hardships occur. He fully acknowledges that these experiences happen and that they can have a massive influence on a person's life.
Okay, so he admits bad things happen.
Yes, absolutely. What he is absolutely denying is the determinism of those events. He's denying that the past event forces you to act a certain way in the present.
I see.
To quote Adler directly from the text, and this is vital, he says, We do not suffer from the shock of our experiences, the so-called trauma, but instead we make out of them whatever suits our purposes.
Wait, read that second part again.
We are not determined by our experiences, but the meaning we give them is self-determining.
Let me make sure I'm grasping the weight of that. The meaning we give them is self-determining. He is saying it is not the actual event that breaks you, it is the interpretation you choose to assign to the event.
Exactly. Adler argues that human beings are not fragile machines at the mercy of cause and effect. You are the sole author of your life, right here and right now.
So the past has no power.
Not inherently. You assign a specific meaning to your past in order to suit a goal you are trying to achieve in the present. The past does not write your future. You selectively read your past to justify the present you want.
I have to push back on this because abstractly, sure, it sounds like an empowering bumper sticker. But in practice, it sounds impossible.
It is incredibly difficult to accept in practice.
Let's look at the vivid example the book provides to test this. The youth describes a friend of his, right? A young man who has become a complete shut-in.
Yes, a severe recluse.
He has locked himself in his room for years. Now, the youth explicitly states that this friend wants to go out. He genuinely wants to have a job. He wants to participate in society. He wants to have friends.
That's what he claims, yes.
But the absolute second he tries to take a single step outside his front door, his body betrays him. He suffers severe heart palpitations, his arms and legs shake uncontrollably, and he falls into a sheer panic.
A very real physical panic attack.
Right. Now, Freudian etiology and honestly, just the baseline common sense for 99% of the population would say this man is agoraphobic because of a severe past cause.
Sure.
Maybe he was relentlessly bullied at school, or perhaps he suffered profound neglect or abuse from his parents. The past cause created the psychic wound, which manifests as the present trauma.
Yeah.
How on earth does Adlerian teleology view a situation this extreme?
Adlerian teleology flips the entire script, and this is where the philosophy really requires immense courage to digest.
Okay, lay it on me.
Adler would argue the exact opposite of the Freudian model. He would say that this young man created the goal of not going out first.
First, before the panic.
Yes, that was his primary overarching objective. And in order to achieve that goal, he manufactures the state of anxiety and fear.
Okay, I am stopping you right there. You are saying this man is choosing to be miserable.
Yes.
You're telling me he is consciously faking a panic attack. I mean, if a person's heart is beating out of their chest and their hands are trembling, you cannot fake that physiological response. That is biology.
You're absolutely right about the biology.
Saying he created the goal to stay inside and manufactured the fear, that sounds like blaming a passenger for a train derailment just because they bought a ticket. You're suggesting he wants to suffer.
Your reaction is exactly the reaction of the youth in the book. It feels completely outrageous. The philosopher validates this shock, but he makes a crucial clarification here.
Which is?
The young man is not faking it. The anxiety, the palpable fear, the racing heart, the trembling hands, they are incredibly real to him in that moment. He might even suffer from severe migraines or violent stomach cramps.
Okay, so it's real.
It is not an act, but Adlerian psychology argues that the mind and the body are one cohesive unit striving toward a goal.
Right.
These physical symptoms are tools. The young man's brain has unconsciously commanded his body to produce the physiological state of panic as a tool to achieve his ultimate goal, which is staying inside his room.
But why? What possible logical goal is served by trapping yourself in a small room for years on end? It completely defies all reason to think someone would desire that outcome over freedom and connection.
It defies reason until you look at the interpersonal dynamics of his environment.
Okay, how so?
Think about this from the perspective of the household. If this young man stays in his room all the time, what is the immediate result?
Well, his parents would probably be a mess.
Exactly. His parents worry intensely. They focus all their attention on him. They handle him with kid gloves. They are extremely careful about what they say and do around him.
Oh, I see.
In the microsociety of his home, he becomes the absolute center of the universe. He achieves a very special, highly protected status.
Wow.
But think about the alternative. If he were to conquer his fear and take even one step out of the house into the real world, what happens to that status?
He loses it completely. He just becomes a regular guy looking for a job.
Exactly. He becomes part of a faceless mass. He becomes average, or, if he struggles, perhaps even less than average.
Just another person on the street.
Right. And he is suddenly surrounded by strangers who do not care about him and who will not take special care of him. The outside world is full of judgment, rejection, and the potential for failure.
So the fear protects him.
Yes. Therefore, to maintain his special protected status as the center of his parents' attention, and to completely avoid the harsh judgment of the outside world, his mind creates the goal of, I must not leave.
And the panic attacks.
And to ensure he does not leave, his mind produces the physical symptoms of anxiety. The anxiety is quite literally the padlock he puts on his own door.
That is a staggering perspective.
Yeah.
When you map it out like that, the Freudian view feels like a warm blanket.
It does.
It consoles you. It says, you are broken because of things outside your control. It is not your fault. You are a victim of your past. It is deeply comforting. But the hidden cost is that it leaves you completely powerless.
Exactly. You're trapped.
And the Adlerian view comes in like a bucket of ice water. It says, you are actively doing this to yourself right now for a very specific strategic reason.
Which is painful to hear.
It is deeply uncomfortable. It strips away all your excuses. But, and I guess this is the flip side, if you accept it, I suppose it also means you inherently possess the power to stop doing it.
You've hit the nail on the head. This is the exact reason why Adlerian psychology is referred to as the psychology of courage.
Psychology of courage.
Right. Because if your past determines everything you do, and the past cannot be changed, you inevitably arrive at nihilism and pessimism. You throw your hands up and say, well, this is just how I am. You give up.
Yeah, what's the point of trying?
But if you accept teleology, if you accept that you are choosing your behavior right now to serve a hidden goal, you suddenly possess absolute freedom.
Freedom to change.
Exactly. And with that freedom comes the terrifying responsibility to choose differently. It requires immense courage to admit you are the architect of your own isolation.
Okay, let's transition from severe cases like extreme agoraphobia to our everyday lives. Because it is one thing to analyze a shut-in, but the book argues that every single one of us operates this way constantly.
We all do it.
We are all fabricating our emotions daily to serve hidden goals. And the specific emotion the book targets next is anger.
Yes, anger is where teleology becomes incredibly visible in our daily routines.
How so?
Adler argues that emotions like anger, frustration, or anxiety are not these uncontrollable biological forces that wash over us like a tidal wave. They are not things that happen to us.
Right.
They are tools. They are means to an end that we pull out of our psychological toolbox, use to achieve an immediate objective, and then put away when the job is done.
Okay, I'm going to challenge this with a scenario directly from the text because I think everyone listening will relate to it.
Go for it.
The youth tells a story to the philosopher about reading a book in a cafe. A waiter walks by and accidentally spills a cup of hot coffee all over the youth's brand new, very expensive jacket.
A classic terrible day.
Right, and the youth instantly blows his top. He yells at the waiter at the top of his lungs, causing a massive public scene. Now, the youth argues, and honestly, if I were in his shoes, I would argue the exact same thing, that this shouting was a completely uncontrollable reaction.
Of course.
The anger was an instantaneous reflexive response to a sudden negative stimulus. He didn't sit there, stroke his chin, analyze the situation and think, I believe I will manufacture some anger now to assert dominance.
No, it feels automatic.
The anger bypassed his conscious thought and hijacked him.
That is a classic ideological excuse, and it is exactly how most of society operates. The emotion got the best of me. I saw red. I couldn't help it. We treat anger like a demonic possession.
Yeah, like something took over.
But the philosopher completely dismantles this defense with a hypothetical. He asks the youth, what if in that exact moment you happen to be carrying a knife and in your rage you stabbed the waiter?
Whoa, that escalated.
Right, but could you still blame the emotion? Could you stand before a judge and say, the anger hijacked me, it was an unavoidable occurrence, I couldn't do anything about it?
No, absolutely not. You'd go to jail.
Exactly. The legal and moral system would reject that because to accept it would mean we have zero free will and are just biological automatons enslaved by our feelings.
Okay, fair point. But if the emotion didn't hijack him, how does the philosopher explain the microsecond reaction of the shouting? How does the brain make that calculation so quickly?
The philosopher explains the sequence of events differently. The youth didn't fly into a rage and then start shouting as a byproduct. He got angry so that he could shout.
He got angry so that he could shout.
Okay. The teleological goal of shouting came before the emotion. In that split second, the youth's brain made a calculation. He wanted to make the waiter submit to him.
Submit to him.
Yes.
Yeah.
He wanted to assert his dominance, force the waiter to listen, and force a groveling apology for the ruined jacket.
Right. He wanted to be in control.
Now, explaining the situation calmly and rationally, saying, "Excuse me, you have ruined my jacket. I need you to pay for dry cleaning." That takes time. It requires patience, articulation, and navigating a conversation.
Which is hard when you're dripping in hot coffee.
Exactly. The youth's brain calculated that patience was too slow and required too much effort. So, as a highly efficient shortcut to force immediate submission, the youth fabricated the emotion of anger.
A shortcut.
Yes. Anger is a cheap, fast, highly effective tool to overpower another human being.
That is deeply unsettling.
It forces you to look in the mirror.
Seriously. To suggest that every time I lose my temper, I am not actually overwhelmed by injustice, but rather I am throwing a highly strategic, calculated adult tantrum just to control the person in front of me.
If you or the listener doubt that anger is a calculated tool that can be holstered and unholstered at will, the philosopher provides one of the most brilliant, universally recognizable anecdotes in modern psychology.
How handy do you hear this?
Picture a mother who is currently screaming at her teenage daughter in a furious, face-reddening rage. They are in the middle of a massive fight.
We've all been there.
Suddenly, the telephone rings. The mother picks up the receiver, her voice still sharp and thick with hostility, and snaps, "Hello?" The caller on the other end says, "Hello, this is your daughter's homeroom teacher."
Oh, I know exactly where this is going.
Instantly, within a millisecond, the mother's entire demeanor changes. Her tone softens. She becomes incredibly polite, using her most pleasant, cultured telephone voice.
A sudden switch?
She carries on a perfectly rational, polite, 5-minute conversation with the teacher about her daughter's progress.
Right.
The moment she says, "Thank you, goodbye," and hangs up the receiver, her face twists back into a scowl, and she immediately resumes screaming at her daughter right where she left off.
We have all seen that happen.
Yeah.
Most of us have done it ourselves. It's the customer service voice switch.
Precisely. And what does that switch prove?
That she wasn't actually out of control.
It proves unequivocally that the mother was never driven by an uncontrollable rage. If she were truly out of control, biologically hijacked by anger, she would not have been able to instantly switch it off just because the teacher called.
Yeah, you can't pause biological rage.
She was simply using the anger as a tool to overpower her daughter with intimidation and volume. When a more important social dynamic arose, the teacher, an authority figure she wanted to impress, she neatly put the anger tool away in a drawer.
And then just took it right back out.
When the call ended, she opened the drawer and picked the tool back up to resume dominating her daughter.
Wow. I want you, the listener, to seriously reflect on this.
Mm-hmm.
Think about a recent time you got angry. Maybe you snapped at your partner overloading the dishwasher, or you yelled at a coworker, or you lost your temper in traffic.
It happens to all of us.
Were you truly chemically out of control? Or were you trying to assert your dominance? Were you using anger as a loud, aggressive shield to avoid having a calm, vulnerable conversation where you might actually have to compromise?
It's a tough question to ask yourself.
The level of self-honesty that Adler is demanding from us here is staggering. It completely strips away our right to play the victim of our own emotions.
It is demanding, but, recognize how liberating it is, too.
How's that?
Because if you accept that emotions are just tools, it means you never have to be controlled by them again. You are the master of the toolbox.
Right. You have the agency.
You can recognize when you are reaching for the anger tool, stop yourself, and choose to communicate your needs using words instead of volume.
But this naturally leads to a massive question. If we are constantly fabricating these intense emotions, if we are generating anxiety to stay in our rooms or manipulating our anger to assert dominance, what exactly are we defending ourselves against?
That is the ultimate question.
Why do we feel the need to walk around armed with all these psychological tools in the first place?
That question brings us to the core thesis of The Second Night. And this is arguably Adler's most famous, most sweeping, and honestly most difficult declaration.
Okay, let's hear it.
He states, "All human suffering, all internal conflict stems entirely from interpersonal relationships."
All of it.
All of it.
All problems are interpersonal relationship problems. That is an absolute statement, and absolute statements are practically begging to be challenged.
They usually are.
I can hear the pushback from our listeners because my immediate reaction is to look for the loophole. So let me present one.
All right, let's test it.
What about a man stranded completely alone on a desert island? He is climbing a coconut tree to get food. He loses his grip, falls, and compound fractures his leg.
Okay.
That is a massive problem. He is in intense physical pain, his survival is threatened, and it has absolutely nothing to do with other people. How can Adler say all problems are interpersonal.
It is a totally fair challenge, and it's actually the exact objection the youth raises in the book.
Oh, glad I'm on the same page as him.
But Adler makes a critical philosophical distinction here between objective physical facts like gravity breaking a bone or the biological need for food, and the subjective psychological suffering that defines the human experience.
Okay, differentiate those for me.
Adler poses a profound thought experiment. To truly rid yourself of all problems, all anxieties, all feelings of inadequacy or worry, you would have to live entirely alone in the universe.
Like on the desert island.
No, not just on a desert island, on a planet full of people. You would have to be the only conscious being in existence. Period.
Ah, because even if you are alone on an island, you still possess the memory of others, the hope of rescue by others, the fear of never seeing others again.
Precisely. Even the concept of loneliness requires the existence of other people. You do not feel lonely simply because you are by yourself. Solitude can be peaceful.
Right, solitude is fine.
You feel lonely because you feel excluded from a community, a society, or a partnership that exists around you. We only become an individual in a social context.
That makes a lot of sense.
Every single anxiety you have about your career, your financial status, your physical appearance, your intelligence, none of those anxieties exist in a vacuum.
Because there'd be no one to impress.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They only exist because there is someone else to compare yourself to, or someone else's expectations you are terrified of failing to meet.
This connects perfectly to a deeply vulnerable moment in the book. The youth confesses to the philosopher that he genuinely hates himself.
It's a very raw moment.
He lists his shortcomings like a laundry list. He says he's pessimistic, he is overly self-conscious, he is distrustful of others, and he despises his own physical appearance.
Right.
He looks at the philosopher and asks, what possible teleological goal could I have in hating myself? There is zero advantage to this misery.
And the philosopher's answer is a brutal reality check.
What does he say?
He tells the youth that he focuses intensely on his own shortcomings because he has made a firm resolution not to start liking himself. Disliking himself is actually a virtue. It is a strategic, calculated benefit.
How does hating yourself benefit you? That sounds crazy.
Because the youth is absolutely terrified of interpersonal relationships. He is terrified of being rejected, snubbed, or deeply hurt by others. The philosopher explains that the self-hatred is a preemptive strike.
I think I get it. So if you hate yourself, you have a built-in ironclad excuse for why people might reject you.
Exactly.
You construct an internal narrative that says, of course that person doesn't want to date me or hire me or be my friend. I'm awkward, I'm ugly, I'm pessimistic. It protects you from the real naked vulnerability of just being yourself, putting yourself out there, and potentially being rejected anyway. If you reject yourself first, no one else can hurt you.
Exactly. You are insulating yourself from the unpredictability of other people. The philosopher illustrates this dynamic with the story of the blushing student.
I remember this one.
A young female student comes to the philosopher for counseling because she suffers from a severe fear of blushing, medically known as erythrophobia.
Right.
Whenever she is in public or speaking to someone, her face turns beet red. She tells the philosopher that there is a man she secretly loves, but she simply cannot confess her feelings to him.
Because of the blushing.
She claims that her blushing is the only thing holding her back. She says, if only you could cure my blushing, I would finally have the courage to tell him how I feel.
Okay, given everything we've learned about teleology, let me guess.
Yeah.
The philosopher absolutely refuses to cure her blushing.
He knows he must not cure the symptom, because the symptom isn't the problem. The symptom is her salvation.
Her salvation.
Yes. The student needs the blushing. Think about what she is actually terrified of. The scariest thing in the world to her is the possibility that she confesses her love to this man and he rejects her.
Right, that would be devastating.
That rejection would shatter her ego and her sense of worth. So what does her mind do? It unconsciously fabricates the physical symptom of blushing as a shield.
So the blushing is an excuse.
As long as she has this problem, she can live in a comfortable, perfectly safe fantasy of possibility.
She gets to live in the if only. Like, if only I didn't blush, he would love me.
Yes. She can hold on to the hope that a relationship is possible without ever having to risk the reality of a rejection.
Wow.
If the philosopher were to somehow magically cure the blushing, what would happen? She would have to go confess. And if the man rejected her anyway, she wouldn't be able to handle it.
She'd be completely broken.
The shock would be too much. She would likely come running back to the counselor, demanding he give her the blushing problem back just so she could have her excuse again.
Living in the fantasy of possibility. That is such a powerful, devastating concept.
It applies to so many areas of life.
Yeah, I'm thinking about how this applies beyond romance. It's the exact same psychology behind chronic procrastination.
Oh, absolutely.
It's the person who always talks about how they're going to write a great novel, but they never actually sit down and submit a manuscript. They claim they just don't have the time because of work.
The classic excuse.
Right. And as long as they don't finish it, they can hold on to the belief that they are an unappreciated genius. If they actually finish it, submit it, and it gets rejected by publishers, the fantasy dies.
They realize they might just be average.
Exactly. So they manufacture the excuse of not having time to protect their ego from the test of reality.
You've perfectly articulated what Adler refers to as the life lie.
The life lie.
We invent these complexes, these phobias, these excuses to avoid what Adler calls the unavoidable life tasks. The tasks of work, friendship, and love.
We use them to hide.
We use these symptoms to avoid the inevitable friction and potential pain of interacting with other people.
Which brings us to a massive component of how we view ourselves in relation to others, right? Inferiority.
Yes, this is crucial.
This is where we really dissect the mechanics of comparison. And the book points out that the word inferiority actually has a very specific meaning in the original German that Adler used. The word is Minderwertigkeitsgefühl.
Yes, Minderwertigkeitsgefühl. It is a mouthful, but its literal translation is crucial to understanding Adler.
What does it literally mean?
It translates to a feeling of having less worth. And the key word there is worth.
Worth.
It is vital to understand that feelings of inferiority are not based on objective, measurable facts. They are entirely subjective assumptions based on the worth we assign to things.
Subjective, meaning it's all in our heads.
Right. The philosopher shares a deeply personal experience to clarify this. He is a short man, standing at about 5'1" or 155 centimeters. For a very long time in his youth, he agonized over his height. It was a massive source of inferiority for him. He felt less than other men.
Sure. Society pushes that.
But eventually, he realized that his height wasn't objectively bad or good. It was just a measurement. It was only a disadvantage when he compared himself to the average height of other men in his society.
Right. Like if you put him on a planet by himself, 5'1" wouldn't be short and 6'5" wouldn't be tall.
Exactly.
It would just be exactly what height is. There is no inherent positive or negative value to a tape measure.
Exactly. It was a purely subjective interpretation driven by societal context. And here's the secret. Because it is subjective, you possess the power to change the interpretation.
So how did he change it?
The philosopher realized that his short stature actually offered a psychological benefit in his line of work. It made him highly approachable. It put people at ease.
Oh, that makes sense.
A massive, towering man might intimidate a patient, but his short stature made people feel safe to open up. Once he changed his subjective interpretation of his physical reality, his feeling of inferiority completely vanished.
Now, we need to make a massive distinction here because the book separates a normal feeling of inferiority from a toxic inferiority complex.
Yes, people confuse these all the time.
In modern pop culture, we throw the phrase inferiority complex around constantly to describe anyone who feels bad about themselves. But Adler saw them as two vastly different psychological states.
This divergence is critical. Adler argues that a standard baseline feeling of inferiority is not a disease.
It's not.
In fact, it is completely healthy and absolutely necessary for human survival. It is the engine of all human progress.
Wait, feeling inferior is necessary?
Think about how we enter the world. We are born as completely helpless infants. We cannot feed ourselves. We cannot move. We are entirely dependent.
True.
Adler notes that human beings have a universal innate desire to escape that state of helplessness. He calls this the pursuit of superiority.
The pursuit of superiority.
It is the drive to improve. When we realize we don't understand a subject, we feel inferior, so we read a book. When a toddler watches adults walking around, they feel a sense of inferiority, so they pull themselves up and practice standing until they can walk.
Okay.
That healthy feeling of inferiority acts as a launch pad for striving and growth.
So feeling like you aren't good enough yet is actually fine. It's a feature, not a bug, as long as it motivates you to work harder and learn.
Precisely.
But when does that healthy engine break down and turn into a complex?
It curdles into an inferiority complex when you begin using the feeling of inferiority as an excuse to stop striving altogether.
When it becomes an excuse.
Right. It is the transition from saying, I am not well educated, so I must study harder to succeed, to saying, I am not well educated, so I can never succeed.
Oh.
It is the twisted logic of, because A is my situation, B is impossible. The person with a complex uses their perceived limitation as a shield. They convince themselves that trying is pointless, thereby perfectly avoiding the risk of trying and failing.
Okay, so the inferiority complex is the ultimate life lie. It's saying, if only I didn't have this one flaw, I would be amazing.
Yes, exactly.
It implies a hidden greatness that is just unfairly suppressed by circumstances outside your control. But what happens when that feeling of inferiority becomes too heavy to bear?
What do you mean?
Like, what happens when a person can't even stand to live with their own excuse anymore because the reality of their stagnation is just too painful?
Well, that intense pressure leads to the other side of the coin, which Adler called the superiority complex.
The superiority complex.
When a person is suffering from intense feelings of inferiority, but they completely lack the courage to compensate for it through healthy, sustained effort, they choose a shortcut.
A shortcut to feeling superior.
Yes. They fabricate grandiosity. They make themselves look bigger, more important, and more successful by using borrowed power.
The book uses a very visual example of this. It mentions a person who walks around wearing heavy rings with rubies and emeralds on every single finger.
Yes, the jewelry example. The person aggressively flaunting their wealth. The person boasting endlessly about their past achievements. The person who constantly name drops powerful acquaintances in conversation.
Right.
They are all acting out of a deep, unacknowledged sense of inadequacy. As Adler astutely points out, the one who boasts does so only out of a feeling of inferiority.
Because if you actually believed you were great, you wouldn't need to yell it from the rooftops.
Think about it. If you truly have confidence in yourself, if you know your own worth, you have zero need to boast. The boasting is a desperate, noisy attempt to force others to accept your value precisely because you don't accept it yourself.
And this brings us to a part of the book that I found incredibly jarring, but also profoundly insightful.
Which part?
Because while boasting about wealth is obvious, the book talks about the absolute darkest manifestation of the superiority complex. And it is something we see constantly, every single day in modern culture.
You're talking about bragging about misfortune.
Exactly. It is bragging about misfortune.
This is perhaps one of Adler's most profound and piercing observations. Bragging about misfortune is when someone actively weaponizes their trauma, their weakness, or their suffering in order to control the people around them.
I have to pause and push back on this, because we live in an era where this dynamic is not just common, it is often celebrated.
It really is.
If you look at internet culture, oversharing your trauma is frequently seen as a badge of honor or the ultimate sign of authenticity. If you have been through something terrible, you are actively encouraged to center your entire identity around it.
True.
But Adler is basically saying that sometimes we use our pain as a leash. We use it to manipulate people. That is a massively tough pill to swallow for a society built on victimhood.
It is intensely difficult to hear, but we must look at the mechanical reality of the behavior.
What's the mechanic?
When someone loudly declares how unfortunate they are, how much they have suffered, and actively refuses to move past it or seek healing, what are they actually doing?
Seeking attention.
More than that, they are demanding special treatment. They force their family, their friends, and their coworkers to walk on eggshells around them.
Oh, wow.
They restrict the speech and behavior of everyone in their orbit because everyone is terrified of triggering them. By making themselves the ultimate victim, they place themselves entirely above criticism.
Because you can't criticize the victim.
Exactly. As Adler noted, in our culture, weakness can be quite strong and powerful. It becomes an invincible position.
The tyranny of the weak.
Precisely. No one can challenge the person who claims the throne of maximum suffering. The baby is the most powerless person in the house, yet the baby controls the entire schedule of the adults through the power of its weakness.
That's a great analogy.
When an adult adopts this strategy, they are using their misfortune to assert superiority and control over others.
That is just, wow. It completely recontextualizes how we view chronic victimhood.
Yeah.
It's not always a cry for help. Sometimes it is a demand for obedience.
Yes.
But this leaves us in a really tricky spot. If we shouldn't use our weakness to control others, and we shouldn't boast to dominate them, how on earth are we actually supposed to coexist with anyone?
It sounds bleak when you put it like that.
Because the way you're describing it, it seems like every human interaction is just a covert power struggle.
Well, if you view life through the lens of competition, then yes, every interaction is a power struggle.
Right.
But Adler offers a completely different paradigm. The Adlerian view of success and the healthy pursuit of superiority is not about climbing a corporate ladder and kicking others down the staircase to ensure you get to the top.
It's not a race.
It is not a zero-sum game where your win necessitates my loss.
So what does a healthy pursuit of superiority actually look like?
Adler wants us to visualize human existence not as a mountain we are fighting to the top of, but as a vast, infinitely flat playing field.
A flat field. Okay.
Everyone in the world is walking on the same flat ground. Some people are walking further ahead of you, some are walking behind you. The speeds differ, the distances covered differ, but the terrain itself is completely flat.
So no one is above or below anyone else.
Exactly. There is no vertical above or below.
Yeah.
The true pursuit of superiority is simply the act of taking a single step forward on your own 2 feet, comparing where you are today to where you were yesterday.
So it's internal.
Yes. You do not compare yourself to the person walking in the lane next to you. You only compare your present self to your ideal self.
It's like running a marathon, but instead of trying to beat your own personal best time, you spend the entire race trying to trip the runners next to you.
That is a perfect analogy.
If you view life as a competition, you expend all your finite energy fighting the people in the adjacent lanes instead of just moving your own feet forward.
If life is a competition with designated winners and losers, then it is mathematically inevitable that you will start to see everyone around you as an enemy.
As an enemy.
You will walk into a room and instantly, subconsciously rank people. He is more financially successful than me. She is more physically attractive than me. I am intellectually smarter than him.
We all do that. It's exhausting.
You are constantly evaluating your status, constantly protecting your flank, which breeds endless, exhausting anxiety. You cannot truly celebrate a friend's success because if they are winning, it feels like you are losing ground.
So you're just trapped.
You are trapped in a state of constant threat.
I want the listener to really take a second and think about this dynamic in their own life. Think about your workplace. Think about your close friend group, or even your extended family gatherings.
It applies everywhere.
Do you view these people as comrades, fellow travelers walking the same flat terrain, facing their own private struggles? Or do you view them as enemies you have to outpace, outsmart, or, based on what we just learned, outsuffer?
It's a profound shift in perspective.
Because if you see them as enemies, you will never, ever find peace. You'll always be on the defensive waiting for an attack.
And that defensive posture is precisely what keeps us from addressing our life tasks. It is what keeps us fabricating anger, holding on to trauma, and nursing inferiority complexes.
Because we're terrified.
If you remove the lenses of competition, you completely remove the fear of defeat. You can finally look at yourself clearly, acknowledge your shortcomings without self-hatred, and begin to make the necessary changes without the terror of being judged as a loser.
This has been an incredibly heavy, paradigm-shifting deep dive. We've gone from the shock of denying that our past controls us, to realizing the uncomfortable truth that we fabricate our anger and anxiety, to understanding that our self-hatred is just a cowardly shield against the unpredictability of other people.
It is a lot to process, which is why the Socratic dialogue takes place over 5 nights.
Right.
But before we wrap up today's session, I want to leave you, the listener, with a final, provocative thought to mull over.
Lay it on us.
Adlerian psychology asserts that your past does not dictate your future and that you possess the inherent power to choose a new lifestyle, a new worldview, right this very second. Okay. If you truly accepted that premise deep in your bones, what is the very first excuse you would have to give up?
Oof.
What is your personal blushing problem or your coffee-spilling rage that you are currently using to avoid vulnerability? If you were to drop that shield today, what responsibility would you finally have to take for your own life?
That is a question that will keep you up at night, and it's exactly the kind of question that forces real growth. That concludes part 1 of our journey through this incredible book. But we are just getting started. In part 2, we will explore the remaining chapters of the dialogue. The third night, discard other people's tasks. The fourth night, where the center of the world is, and the fifth night, to live in earnest in the here and now. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive today. Remember, the courage to change is entirely in your hands.
It is a profound pleasure to be back. I'm really ready to continue this journey.
Welcome back to our ongoing series on The Courage to be Disliked by Ichiro Kishimi and Fumitake Koga. This is part 2 of our deep dive into Adlerian philosophy.
Yeah, and if you were listening to part 1, you know we covered some incredibly heavy, paradigm-shifting ground.
We really dismantled the way most of us look at our own pasts.
Yeah.
We contrasted Freudian etiology, this idea that your past traumas strictly dictate your current reality.
Right, with Adlerian teleology, which is the idea that we are actually driven by our present goals.
And we often just use our past as an excuse to avoid changing. We also lay down a massive foundational claim. According to Alfred Adler, all problems are interpersonal relationship problems.
That is the perfect place to pick up. We replaced a psychology of determinism with a psychology of courage and, of choice.
But recognizing that you are driven by your present goals rather than your past trauma is only the first step, right?
Exactly. It is basically the diagnosis. The real work, the actual treatment, requires us to completely reevaluate how we navigate those interpersonal relationships.
And the source text is structured as this intense, ongoing dialogue between a skeptical youth and a calm, authoritative philosopher.
Yeah, and it is written that way because the concepts Adler proposes are, frankly, infuriating to our modern sensibilities. They demand friction.
They absolutely demand friction. Because when you first read them, they sound almost completely wrong. Today, we are covering the final 3 chapters, or nights, of the book.
The 3rd night is discard other people's tasks. The 4th night is where the center of the world is.
And the 5th night is to live in earnest in the here and now. And I have to be honest, as I was going through these chapters, reading the arguments of that skeptical youth, I found myself nodding along with him.
Oh, I think everyone does.
The youth is passionate, frustrated, and he just pushes back against the philosopher's calm wisdom. I felt that exact same resistance.
Which is completely natural.
So, to you listening, our mission today is ambitious. We are going to completely upend how you view your obligations to others, and we are going to provide a practical, if counterintuitive, roadmap to genuine happiness.
And we left off previously with this massive claim that all problems are interpersonal relationship problems.
So if that is the root of human suffering, what is Adler's radical first step to fix them?
Adler starts by attacking the very mechanism that holds our social structures together. The first step to fixing interpersonal problems is to absolutely and unequivocally deny the desire for recognition.
Okay, I have to stop you immediately. Deny the desire for recognition?
Completely deny it.
That is completely counter to human nature. Isn't wanting to be recognized by our parents, our bosses, our peers, and society at large completely natural?
It feels natural, sure.
I mean, it's a biological drive. We are social animals. We want people to value us so we can be secure.
Right. That is the common assumption.
In the book, the youth actually quotes Dostoevsky, bringing up the line, "Money is coined freedom." And the argument is essentially that the desire for status, for recognition, is just a desire for that freedom.
It is a really compelling argument on the surface.
Right, because if society recognizes my value, I get resources. And with resources, I am free. How can Adler possibly deny that?
Now, the Dostoevsky quote is brilliant, and it gets to the heart of how we misunderstand freedom. Money certainly buys a degree of physical freedom.
Like freedom from starvation or freedom from exposure.
Exactly. But Adler is interested in psychological freedom. He argues that seeking validation or living to satisfy the expectations of others fundamentally deprives you of true freedom.
I need you to break down the mechanics of that. Because how does getting a promotion because my boss recognizes my hard work deprive me of freedom? I have more money, more status, and more choices.
Let's look at the underlying mechanism, the why and the how, behind your pursuit of that promotion. Why do we seek recognition in the first place?
Because it feels good.
Adler points directly to what he calls reward and punishment education. From the moment we are born, we are conditioned by a specific neurological and psychological baseline.
Meaning how our parents raise us.
Yes, and our schools. We are taught that if we take an appropriate action, we receive praise, perhaps a literal gold star. If we take an inappropriate action, we are rebuked or punished.
Okay, so a basic behaviorist model.
Right. But over time, this rewires our motivation. We stop acting out of intrinsic desire or morality, and we begin acting exclusively for the external reward.
So we only do the right thing because someone is watching and ready to hand out a treat.
Exactly. And this leads to a deeply conditional, highly fragile lifestyle. The subconscious logic becomes, if no one is going to praise me, I will not do this good deed.
Or conversely, if no one is around to punish me, I can do whatever inappropriate thing I want.
Precisely. If your entire motivation is to satisfy another person's expectations, like your parents hope that you become a doctor,
Or your bosses demand that you work late, or even society's expectation of what success looks like.
You are constantly modifying your behavior to please an external judge. You are essentially living someone else's life.
Because you're constantly gauging their reactions, terrified of disappointing them.
Yes. You are a prisoner to their shifting moods. Is that freedom?
Wow. Okay, I see the logic, but the alternative feels impossible. If I just completely ignore what my boss expects of me or what my spouse expects of me, I am going to get fired and divorced.
That is the extreme fear, yes.
I'll just become this totally selfish rogue agent acting only on my own whims. That doesn't sound like a functioning human being.
That is the natural fear, and it assumes that the only alternative to seeking recognition is complete chaotic selfishness. But Adler introduces a structural tool to solve this exact dilemma.
Okay, what is the tool?
It is perhaps the most vital, revolutionary concept in all of Adlerian psychology, the separation of tasks.
Okay, the separation of tasks. Walk me through this. How does this prevent me from just being a reckless narcissist who ignores everyone?
It requires a fundamental shift in how you analyze every conflict of your life. Adler posits that virtually all interpersonal conflict arises from one of two things.
Which are?
Either you are intruding on someone else's task, or you are allowing someone else to intrude on your task. The solution is to draw a firm boundary. You must distinguish your own life tasks from the tasks of others.
But how do you practically define that boundary? Life is messy. How do you tell the difference between my task and your task?
By asking one simple, ruthlessly objective question: who ultimately bears the consequences of the choice?
Who bears the consequence? Okay.
The book uses a very common, everyday example to illustrate this. Consider a child who absolutely refuses to study.
Oh, this is a good one.
Their grades are slipping, they are failing classes, and the parents are agonizing over it. They are yelling, taking away privileges, trying to bribe the kid with new video games if they get an A. It is a war zone in the house.
Right, and most parents listening would completely relate. And they would scream, "It's my task. I'm the parent. It is my fundamental duty to make sure my kid succeeds and gets into a good college."
But apply the rule. Who ultimately bears the consequences of the choice?
Well, the child does.
Exactly. If the child does not study, who suffers the long-term consequence of not understanding the material, of failing the class, or struggling to find a job later in life?
The child does. I mean, the parents might feel embarrassed at PTA meetings, but the actual material consequence falls entirely on the child.
Therefore, studying is the child's task, not the parent's.
Wait. Are you saying a parent should just watch their kid fail out of high school?
That is how it sounds at first.
That sounds like complete negligence.
Mitch,
Teenagers don't have fully developed prefrontal cortexes. They don't always understand long-term consequences. You have to force them for their own good.
Adler does not advocate for neglect or abandonment. This is a crucial distinction. The separation of tasks is not about washing your hands of someone you love.
Then what is it?
It is about understanding the difference between intervention and assistance. When a parent forces a child to study, commands them to sit at the desk, or screams at them, that is an intervention.
It is intruding forcefully into someone else's task.
Yes. And what happens when you do that? The child rebels. They study just enough to get the parent off their back, but they never develop the intrinsic motivation to learn.
They view studying as a punishment inflicted by the parent.
Exactly.
So if I shouldn't intervene, what does assistance look like?
Assistance is creating the environment. The parent's task is to communicate. I see that you are struggling. Studying is your task, but I am ready to help you whenever you need it.
Oh, I see.
You say, I can hire a tutor, I can sit with you, I can help you organize your time if and when you ask. You are standing right there, offering support, but you do not force the action.
The old proverb, you can lead a horse to water, but you cannot make him drink. So your task is to provide the water. Drinking is the horse's task. If you try to shove the horse's head underwater, you're just going to drown it or get kicked in the teeth.
Precisely. And when parents rob their children of the opportunity to face their own consequences, they are actually robbing them of the opportunity to develop courage.
That makes sense. If you shield them from every failure, they never learn how to recover.
Exactly.
I want to apply this outside of parenting because the book brings up an amazing historical analogy to show just how radical this separation needs to be.
The Gordian knot.
Yes, the analogy of Alexander the Great cutting the Gordian knot. The legend goes that there was this incredibly complex knot tied to a chariot in the city of Gordium, and an oracle prophesied that whoever could untangle it would rule all of Asia.
It was famously impossible to untangle.
Right. For years, brilliant people tried to pick at the threads, slowly trying to untangle this massive, messy knot. Alexander the Great walks up, looks at it, draws his sword, and just slices the whole thing in half.
It is a stunning visual metaphor. When we are stuck in messy, codependent relationships, whether with a spouse, a parent, or a boss, we usually try to untangle it thread by thread.
We negotiate, we argue, we compromise a little here and there, hoping to finally get them to see our side.
And Adler is saying, draw your sword. The separation of tasks isn't about slowly negotiating boundaries. It is a decisive, immediate cutting of the threads of unhealthy dependencies.
You just slice it.
You look at a tangled conflict and say, this part is mine, that part is yours, I will not cross this line, and you will not cross mine.
It's like driving a car. I can be in the passenger seat, navigating, pointing out the hazards. That's assistance.
Yes.
But the second I reach over and grab the steering wheel from the driver, that is intervention, and we are both going to crash. I had to let them steer even if they hit a pothole.
That is a perfect modern analogy.
But man, that sounds incredibly harsh in practice. Let's say I cut the Gordian knot at work. I tell my boss I have completed my tasks for the day. Your anger about the unrealistic deadline you set is your task, not mine. I am going home.
And what would happen?
My boss is going to despise me. My colleagues might hate me for not staying late and suffering with them.
This brings us to a profound philosophical junction. What is real freedom? We talked about how seeking recognition makes you a slave.
Yeah.
Adlerian psychology asserts that genuine freedom is fundamentally the willingness to be disliked by others.
You are saying freedom is being disliked.
Yes.
That sounds like a recipe for a deeply isolated, miserable life. Why would anyone want to be disliked?
To understand the why here, the philosopher brings in Immanuel Kant. Kant talked extensively about inclination.
Inclination meaning what we naturally want to do.
Exactly. Inclinations are instinctive, impulsive desires. We naturally, instinctively want to be liked. We want to be accepted by the tribe.
Because from an evolutionary standpoint, it makes sense. If the tribe kicks you out, you starve or get eaten by a predator, it is biology. It is gravity.
Right. Our brains are literally wired to view social rejection as physical pain.
So it's not just a minor preference. It's a deep biological urge.
Exactly. Now, Kant and Adler would argue that if you simply yield to that gravity, if you just roll down the hill following those natural inclinations.
Like letting the desire to be liked bounce you around like a stone tumbling down a mountain.
Right. If you do that, you are not free. You are a slave to your biological impulses and societal conditioning.
So freedom is not rolling downhill.
Freedom is the immense conscious effort of pushing the tumbling self up the hill against gravity, against your own inclinations.
So just to be crystal clear here, Adler isn't saying we should become edgelords. We shouldn't go out of our way to act terribly, insult people, and be malicious just to make people hate us, right?
No, absolutely not. The goal isn't to become a villain.
Okay, good.
The goal is non-interference and authenticity. It means you live according to your own principles, you fulfill your own tasks to the best of your ability, and you absolutely refuse to intervene in the tasks of others.
Now, if someone dislikes you for doing that.
Right. Ask yourself, whose task is their dislike?
Well, according to the rule, their emotion is their task.
Precisely. You cannot control their emotions, and trying to do so is an intervention. If your boss is angry that you went home after finishing your work, his anger is his task to manage, not yours to soothe.
Because trying to make everyone like you requires you to swear loyalty to everyone.
The text compares it to a corrupt politician who promises everything to every constituent, constantly changing their stance to please the person in front of them until they eventually collapse under the weight of their own contradictions.
Having the courage to be happy fundamentally requires the courage to be disliked. The cost of living free is that someone, somewhere, will be unhappy with you.
That is the price of admission.
That is a tough pill to swallow, but the logic is airtight. It means that your anxiety about what other people think of you is actually you being a hypocrite. You are intruding on their task.
Exactly. Their judgment of you is their problem. Your task is just to live your life authentically.
But this brings up a massive counter-argument, and it transitions us into the material covered in the fourth night.
Let's hear it.
If we are separating tasks this ruthlessly, if we are cutting Gordian knots and we no longer care if people dislike us, doesn't that just create a world of millions of isolated, selfish individuals?
Just everyone for themselves.
Yeah, we're all just islands walking around saying, not my problem, that's your task. That sounds incredibly lonely.
It is the most common and most dangerous misunderstanding of Adler's work. The separation of tasks is not the end goal of interpersonal relationships.
It's not.
No, it is not the final destination. It is merely the starting point. It is the gateway you must pass through to clear away the toxic dependencies.
Oh, so you have to clear the brush before you build a house.
Exactly. To understand the actual destination, we have to look at what Adler called individual psychology.
Right, which always felt like a misnomer to me because the word individual sounds like isolated or alone.
It is a translation nuance.
Yeah.
The original term Adler used relates to the etymology of the word individual, which means indivisible.
Indivisible, like you can't be divided.
Right. Adler vehemently rejected the dualism that was popular at the time, like Freudian dualism, which pitted the conscious mind against the unconscious, or the idea that reason and emotion are two armies at war inside you.
Or that the mind and body are separate entities.
Yes. Adler believed we must view the self as an indivisible, integrated whole. When you yell in anger, it is not your anger taking over. It is you, the whole person, choosing to yell.
Okay, so we take accountability as a whole, indivisible self.
Yes.
But if we are a whole, indivisible self, and we've successfully separated our tasks from everyone else's, how do we actually connect with anyone without getting entangled again?
Through what Adler calls community feeling, or social interest. If task separation is the start, community feeling is the ultimate goal of all interpersonal relationships.
Let's unpack community feeling. How do we get from saying, your anger is your task, leave me alone, to feeling a deep sense of community?
It requires a massive, almost Copernican shift in perspective. You have to shift your focal point from self-centeredness, which Adler calls attachment to self.
Okay, shifting from attachment to self to what?
To a broader social perspective, which he calls concern for others.
But wait a minute. Earlier you said that wanting recognition from others was bad. You said wanting people to like us was rolling down the hill. Isn't wanting recognition a way of caring about what others think? Isn't that concern for others?
This is where Adler's insight is incredibly sharp. He argues the exact opposite. People who are obsessed with their desire for recognition are actually wildly, profoundly self-centered.
I'm going to need you to explain that because it sounds contradictory.
Think about the internal monologue of someone who is desperate to be liked. They are constantly worrying, what do they think of me? Do they like my outfit? Am I getting enough praise for this project? Did I say the wrong thing?
Right. On the surface, it looks like they care about other people.
But in reality, they aren't looking at other people at all. They are only looking at themselves. They are treating other people merely as mirrors to reflect their own worth back to them.
Oh.
They think they are the protagonist of the world, like a prince or princess, standing in the center of the stage, constantly wondering, what will this person give me? Will they give me applause? Will they give me love?
That is a gut punch. So, constantly worrying about being liked isn't empathy at all. It's practically narcissism.
Yeah.
You are reducing everyone around you to a prop in your own play.
Exactly. Community feeling flips this dynamic entirely. Instead of standing in the center of the world asking, what will this person give me? You step back, realize you were just a part of the whole, and ask, what can I give to this person?
You move from attachment to self to concern for others.
Yes.
Okay, I am with you so far on the interpersonal level. But in the text, the philosopher pushes this concept to an extreme that absolutely infuriates the youth.
Oh, you mean the definition of community?
Yes. The philosopher claims that this community we are supposed to feel a part of extends far beyond our family, our friends, or our workplace.
He says it includes the entire universe.
The past, the future, plants, animals, and even inanimate objects. As the skeptical youth, I have to throw my hands up here. That sounds like abstract, mystical nonsense.
It really does at first glance.
How am I, practically speaking, supposed to feel a sense of community with a rock or a teacup or the Andromeda galaxy?
It is arguably the most difficult and misunderstood concept in Adlerian psychology. It sounds like New Age mysticism, but it actually has very rigorous practical application for mental health.
Okay, ground this for me.
To understand it, we have to look at how we suffer when we restrict our definition of community. Let's say you are a high school student and your entire identity, your entire social universe is wrapped up in your school. That school is your only community.
Right.
If you get mercilessly bullied or if you fail your classes and become an outcast, what happens?
You feel like your life is completely over. Because if the school is your whole world and school rejects you, your whole world has rejected you.
Precisely. You feel you have no refuge. You might even contemplate terrible things because you cannot see outside that tiny box. The same happens to adults whose entire identity is their corporation or their marriage.
If they get fired, or divorced, they lose their entire universe.
Adler's concept of the infinite community is a psychological safety net. It is the recognition that you belong to a system far, far larger than your immediate visible surroundings.
Ah, I see. It's like a systems theory perspective.
Exactly. If a small community, your school, your workplace, even your family, rejects you, it is not the end of your existence. You can find refuge in the fact that you still belong to the larger community of your city.
Or your country, humanity, the earth, and yet the physical universe itself.
You are made of matter. You are part of the cosmos. You always have a place. You never lose your citizenship in the universe. If you are suffering in a small community, Adler says you must listen to the voice of the larger community.
You don't have to cling to the small, toxic community right in front of you.
Right.
That is actually incredibly comforting. It shrinks the immediate crisis down to a manageable size. Your boss yelling at you feels world-ending until you remember that you are a biological organism on a planet spinning in a massive galaxy, and your boss's anger is just a tiny, insignificant fluctuation in a much larger system.
It gives you immense perspective.
But let's bring it back down to earth. If we are trying to foster this community feeling with the people actually around us, how do we guide each other? If a child does something good or a coworker helps us out, how do we respond?
Which brings us to a massive controversial point in the book.
Yes, Adler violently opposes both praising and rebuking others.
He completely rejects both the carrot and the stick.
Let's use the classic animal training analogy. When you train a dog, you yell "bad dog" and maybe hit it with a rolled-up newspaper. That's rebuking.
And if you say "good dog" and give it a treat, that's praising.
Adler says both of these are forms of manipulation. I completely understand why yelling and hitting are bad, but why on earth is praising bad? Why is saying "good job" to my kid or my employee a negative thing?
To understand why praise is destructive, we have to examine the hidden power dynamics in our language. Adler categorizes relationships into two types, vertical and horizontal.
Vertical meaning a hierarchy.
Yes. Rebuking and praising both require a vertical hierarchical relationship. One person is positioned above, looking down on the person below.
Even praising.
Especially praising. Think about the mechanics of praise. When a mother says, "good job," to a child who helped clean up their toys, she is evaluating an action from a position of authority and superiority.
I see what you mean.
To prove this, use a workplace analogy. Imagine your CEO is carrying a heavy box and you run ahead and hold the elevator door open for them. Would you look at your CEO, pat them on the back and say, "Good job, you're such a good helper"?
Absolutely not. It would be incredibly condescending. I'd probably get fired or at least get a very weird look.
Exactly. Why is it condescending? Because that language, "good job," implies that you possess the authority to judge their behavior. Praise is a judgment handed down from a superior to an inferior.
Its underlying goal is manipulation, to get the inferior person to repeat the behavior that the superior finds pleasing.
When you praise a child, you reinforce the vertical dynamic. You are subconsciously teaching them that they only have value when they meet a superior's criteria. You are driving them right back into the trap of seeking recognition.
Mind blown. Okay, so if I can't praise my kids and I can't praise my employees, what am I supposed to do? If they do something wonderful, I can't just stare at them blankly.
Adler offers a powerful, transformative alternative. Encouragement based on horizontal relationships.
Horizontal, so eye to eye. Equals.
Yes. Instead of evaluating them with a vertical judgment like good or bad, you treat them as an equal, a comrade in your shared community, and you express horizontal gratitude.
Gratitude instead of praise.
You simply say, "Thank you," or "I really appreciate your help," or "That saved me a lot of time."
You replace judgment with gratitude, thank you, instead of good job.
Yes. Think about how it feels to receive those two phrases. When you hear "good job," you feel evaluated. When you hear "thank you," you do not feel judged.
You feel appreciated.
You realize that your existence and your actions have made a positive contribution to another person. And according to Adler, realizing that you are beneficial to the community is the only way humans generate true, unshakable self-worth.
That feeling of contribution is what gives us the courage to face our life tasks.
Precisely.
For everyone listening, think about how this changes your dynamic at work or at home. If you want to empower the people around you, stop evaluating them. Stop acting like a judge handing out gold stars or demerits.
Start treating them like comrades on a horizontal plane.
Express genuine gratitude. It shifts the relationship from one of control and manipulation to one of mutual respect and genuine connection.
It is the practical application of community feeling.
Which brings us perfectly into the final section of our deep dive, covering the fifth night. To live in earnest in the here and now. We've talked about separating tasks. We've talked about viewing people as comrades in a horizontal community. But how do we actually internally achieve this?
The book says it requires a triad of practices, three-part loop. The first part is self-acceptance.
And the philosopher makes a really sharp, crucial distinction between self-affirmation and self-acceptance.
Yes, this is vital because modern pop psychology often conflates the two. We hear constantly about the power of positive thinking or reciting daily affirmations in the mirror. I am a winner. I can achieve anything. I am beautiful.
Adlerian psychology views self-affirmation as a dangerous, delusional lie.
Very dangerous.
How so? Why is positive thinking dangerous?
Let's use the analogy from the text, the 60% student. Imagine a student takes a difficult test and scores 60 out of 100.
Okay.
Self-affirmation is looking at that test and telling yourself, I am really a 100% student, I just had a bad day, or the teacher graded unfairly. The real me is perfect.
It is lying to yourself to protect your fragile ego. It is a refusal to engage with reality.
Yes, it's toxic positivity.
It's denying the truth because the truth hurts.
Exactly. Self-acceptance, on the other hand, is what the philosopher calls affirmative resignation.
Affirmative resignation, what does that look like?
It is looking at that 60% score and saying, I scored 60%. This is the reality of my current ability. I accept this flawed, limited version of myself.
But wait, if I am the youth here, I have to push back. Doesn't affirmative resignation just lead to apathy? If I just accept that I am a 60% student, don't I just shrug and say, guess I'll just be mediocre forever? It sounds like giving up.
It would be giving up if the process stopped there. But true self-acceptance is the necessary precursor to change.
Ah, I see.
Once you accept the 60%, without ego, without excuses, and without denial, you can finally ask the crucial question, now what can I do to get closer to 100%?
You separate what you can control from what you cannot.
You cannot change the fact that you scored 60% on that test. It is in the past. But you can change how you study for the next one. Affirmative resignation strips away the emotional baggage of shame and allows you to deal with reality objectively.
You can't fix a leaky pipe. If you keep reciting affirmations that the pipe is perfectly fine, you have to accept the pipe is broken before you pick up a wrench.
Fantastic analogy.
Okay, so step one of the triad is accepting myself exactly as I am, flaws and all. What is step two?
Step two is confidence in others. And Adler uses a very specific, demanding definition of confidence here. He means placing unconditional trust in others.
Unconditional trust. Are you kidding me?
That is always the reaction.
Because we live in the real world. If I trust everyone unconditionally, my coworkers, my business partners, strangers on the internet, I am going to get scammed. I am going to get taken advantage of, betrayed, and ruined. It's a dog-eat-dog world. You have to verify before you trust.
This is exactly how the youth reacts, and this is where the genius of Adler's system reveals itself, because we have to bring back the rule we learned in the third night, the separation of tasks.
Ah. Okay, walk me through how task separation applies to getting scammed or betrayed.
Suppose you choose to unconditionally trust a business partner, and they steal from you. Whose task is the betrayal?
Well, according to the rule, it's their task. They are the one committing the immoral act.
Exactly. Their betrayal, their dishonesty is their task. Your task is simply to trust. The moment you place conditions on your trust, like I will only trust you if you prove you are loyal, or I will only trust you if you sign this 50-page contract, you are operating from a standpoint of doubt.
You are entering the relationship, investigating them as a potential enemy.
Yes, and if you treat everyone as a potential enemy, constantly guarding your flanks, you can never build a horizontal relationship. You can never form a community, and you will never find that refuge we talked about earlier.
So by trying to protect myself from the pain of betrayal, I am guaranteeing the pain of isolation.
Precisely. You will live in an impregnable fortress of your own making, completely safe and completely alone.
But I'm still getting ripped off in this scenario.
Now, this doesn't mean you must continue a relationship with someone who repeatedly betrays you. You can sever the relationship, that is your task.
Yeah.
But while you are in the relationship, your task is to trust unconditionally.
That is incredibly profound. Okay, let's say I manage to do this. I accept my flawed 60% self. I unconditionally trust that you are my comrade and not my enemy. What is the final step of the triad?
Step 3 is contribution to others. Active contribution to society is how we realize our worth.
Now, I have to channel the youth again here because this sets off alarm bells. Contribution to others sounds an awful lot like bitter self-sacrifice.
It does sound like that.
It sounds like I'm supposed to become a martyr, giving up my own dreams, my own time, and my own happiness to serve everyone else. Isn't that just going back to living other people's lives?
It is a vital distinction. Adler actively warns against self-sacrifice. He argues that people who martyr themselves, who sacrifice their lives for others, have actually conformed too much to society. They lack task separation.
Then what is true contribution?
True contribution is not about getting rid of the I or destroying the self. It is actually done for the sake of the I.
That sounds like a paradox. How can contributing to others be for my own sake?
Remember what we established during the discussion on praise and gratitude. We only feel we have worth when we feel we are beneficial to the community.
Right.
When you engage in labor, whether it's a corporate job, washing the dishes for your family, or volunteering, you aren't doing it to win praise. If you do it for praise, you will be miserable if no one thanks you. You do it to prove to yourself that you are of use.
It's an internal metric, not an external one.
Precisely. It is the subjective feeling of contribution that creates happiness. You don't even need the other person to acknowledge it. If you wash the dishes and your family doesn't say thank you, you don't get angry because you didn't do it for their praise. You did it to act out your community feeling.
To illustrate this dynamic of how we view the people we are contributing to, the book shares this incredible statistical anecdote from Judaism.
The one about the 10 people.
Right. The teaching goes like this. Out of any 10 people you meet in life, one person will criticize you and hate you no matter what you do. 2 people will accept you, understand you, and love you for exactly who you are. And the remaining 7 people just don't care. Either way, they are totally neutral.
It is a profound, incredibly accurate reflection of human nature and social dynamics.
And the philosopher asks, who do you focus on? A person lacking self-acceptance will focus all their energy, 100% of their anxiety, on the one person who hates them.
They will desperately try to win that one person over, twisting themselves into knots, or they will feel completely destroyed by their criticism.
But Adler says we must ignore the one and focus entirely on the 2 who love us and the 7 who are neutral.
Because focusing on the one person who hates you is a life lie. It is an excuse. You use their hatred as an excuse to avoid the terrifying tasks of trusting others and contributing.
If you focus on the 2 who love you, you can engage in the triad we just discussed.
And it truly is a circular upward loop. Self-acceptance gives you the courage to have unconditional trust in others. Unconditional trust allows you to see others as comrades, which naturally leads you to want to contribute to them.
That contribution proves your subjective worth to yourself, which in turn deepens your self-acceptance.
It's a beautiful upward spiral.
It completely counters the downward spiral we usually live in, seeking recognition, inevitably getting disappointed when we don't get it, feeling inferior and isolating ourselves.
But this entire upward spiral, this triad of acceptance, trust, and contribution, can only happen in one specific place, according to Adler. And this brings us to the grand finale of the philosopher's argument.
Yes, it can only happen in the here and now.
The book analyzes life in a way that shatters our modern obsession with goal setting. It argues that we should not view life as a linear line with a fixed destination, but rather as a series of disconnected moments.
We are deeply conditioned by society and by ideology to view life as a journey up a mountain. The summit is the goal. Getting the degree, getting married, becoming the CEO, retiring on a beach.
If life is a continuous line leading to a summit, then everything before you reach the top is just the journey. It is a provisional life. It is a waiting room. You are not really living yet. You are just on your way to living.
But wait, if I don't treat life like a journey to a goal, doesn't that mean I have to give up on grand ambitions? If I don't have my eyes fixed on the summit, if I don't achieve a great legacy, am I a failure? Have I wasted my potential?
This is where Adler's philosophy intersects beautifully with Aristotelian physics. The philosopher introduces the distinction between kinetic movements and energia movements.
Okay, kinetic versus energy. Break that down.
A kinetic movement is one that has a destination. If I walk from my house to the grocery store, that is a kinetic movement. The walking is just a means to an end. The goal is to be at the store. If I could teleport there instantly, I would.
Right. The journey is just an annoying obstacle between you and the goal.
But an energia movement is an action where the process itself is the outcome. The philosopher brilliantly translates this into the analogy of dancing. When you dance, the goal isn't to arrive at a specific geographic spot on the dance floor.
Exactly. You don't waltz across the room, hit the corner, and say, "Screw I made it for the corner, I win the dance."
The dancing itself is the goal. Playing a symphony is an energy of movement. If the only goal of a symphony was to reach the final chord, the orchestra would just play the final note immediately and go home.
That makes perfect sense.
Life, Adler argues, is energia. It is a series of moments, a series of dots. It is not a line. If you are dancing earnestly in the here and now, you will naturally move somewhere. You might end up being a CEO or an artist or a dedicated parent, but you didn't treat the dancing as merely a means to an end.
Live like you're dancing. I love that imagery. The motion is the meaning.
And to truly live like you are dancing, you must eliminate what Adler calls the greatest life lie.
The greatest life lie. Let's unpack the mechanics of that.
The greatest life lie is postponing your life. It happens when you shine a dim spotlight on the past, obsessing over the traumas that etiology tells you cannot be changed.
And it happens when you shine a dim spotlight on the future, gripped by anxiety over things that haven't even happened yet, obsessing over the summit you haven't reached.
By focusing your attention on the past and the future, you leave the here and now, the only place where you actually exist, the only place where you can change anything, in total darkness.
Because the past, physically, does not exist anymore. It is gone. And the future is completely unwritten.
Therefore, you must take that spotlight, make it blindingly bright, and shine it entirely on the here and now. If you shine a bright enough spotlight right at your own feet, you won't even be able to see the past or the future.
You will only see what you can do right in this exact present moment.
It perfectly circles back to the very first concept we discussed in part 1. Your life is not determined by your past. It is not dictated by your trauma. Your life is decided here and now, in this exact moment, based on how you choose to view the world.
We have covered an immense, challenging amount of ground today. If we synthesize all of this, we see the complete, brilliant architecture of Adler's framework for achieving true human happiness. It is not a passive state of joy. It is an active practice.
First, you must have the courage to draw the line and separate your tasks from the tasks of others. This frees you from the suffocating desire for recognition, from reward and punishment conditioning, and grants you the freedom to be disliked.
Second, having established your individual boundaries, you must recognize that you are an indivisible part of a much larger universe. You shift your gaze from your own ego to the well-being of your comrades. You abandon the manipulative vertical judgments of praise and rebuke and replace them with the horizontal equality of encouragement and genuine gratitude.
And finally, you realize this community feeling through a continuous triad, accepting your flawed self without delusion, trusting others unconditionally, even at the risk of betrayal, and finding your intrinsic worth in your contribution to them.
And you do all of this not for some distant, imagined reward at the summit of a mountain, but by dancing earnestly in the reality of the present moment. So, what does this all mean?
It completely reframes existence. Happiness is not a destination you arrive at after untangling all your childhood trauma and finally getting everyone in the world to applaud you. Happiness is a choice. It is a posture. It is a way of dancing right here, right now with the people around you.
As we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you, our listener, with a final provocative thought to mull over. It builds on everything we've unpacked today about energia and living in the present. If you viewed this very moment, you, wherever you are, listening to these words right now, not as a stepping stone to becoming a better, smarter version of yourself tomorrow,
but as the actual destination itself.
Exactly. How would the way you are listening right now change?
That is the ultimate question of Adlerian psychology, a very powerful thought to sit with.
Thank you for joining us for this incredible exploration through the courage to be disliked. Remember, your life is not a line, it is a series of dots. Your life is decided here and now. Keep dancing. Take care, everyone.